I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of insanity that just seems to be following around Disney these days. Recently, they lost like 44% value in their stock, like $123 billion or something like that. It feels like I'm re-experiencing the dying days of WCW. They brought back Eric Bischoff. Disney brings back Bob Iger, but it's already a sinking ship, it feels like. And here to talk to me about that is Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing fantastic, Wes. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Do you remember WCW?
Oh, I remember WCW.
They were failing, and they had to bring back the guy that started the failure to begin with, and he just basically finished it off. Is that what's going on with Bob Iger here?
I mean, it really is. All of the problems that they have, all of the problems that they're experiencing, all of the things that got laid at Chapek's door were all him having to deal with all of the things that Bob Iger put in place. Bob Iger overspent on Fox. He put the company in a very poor financial position. When the pandemic hit, it's almost like they moved Chapek in as a shield and moved Bob Iger out, and then let all that negative publicity fall on Chapek, only to pull him out and bring back the architect of their destruction. So it's really an interesting thing going on with Disney right now. I don't know how they pull up from this.
Well, they had Chapek, and obviously they did extend him before they fired him, and apparently he still has some supporters, so they're cleaning that one out. Head of directors of Walt Disney Company, director Susan Arnold, has been replaced by Mark Parker, the executive chairman of Nike. Arnold has been on the board for 15 years, with some outlets pointing that tenure as a reason for her departure today. However, the sudden announcement of the change with no prior press is of some mystery, according to that Park Place WDW Pro specifically. Arnold is notable for her short tenure as chairman of the board and being the spearhead of the unanimous decision to renew Bob Chapek in July of 2022, and the sudden reversal in November of last year. So apparently she's part of the fall guy for what Bob Chapek did, to where basically things failed that Bob Iger put in place.
It's such an interesting story that came out of there about how that whole coup kind of happened. You had people going behind and going to the board and saying Chapek's a disaster and he's moving money around and he's hiding money and we need to bring Bob Iger back in. And then they do it in the dead of night on a Sunday while Bob Chapek's at an Elton John concert. He gets notified that your keys aren't going to work tomorrow morning. It's a real Game of Thrones kind of corporate situation over there.
There's been lots of accusations about them hiding numbers, that they were inflating their subscriber numbers by, people that weren't actually active subscribers. Like maybe they got a subscription with their phone plan and stuff like that. They were counting them as active subscribers, bump up the numbers when it came to, obviously the people that were backing the company and stuff like that. And it sounds like they've been cooking the books actually for quite a while. That's not good.
No, it seems like it's going to bite him in the ass finally, too. We had that whistleblower that came out a few years ago that said that they were counting things twice. They would sell a gift card and they would count that purchase. But then when someone used the gift card, they would count that as another, they would count that as more money. So they were basically income. Just double dipping on their numbers. And, I don't know how true or false that is, but, it definitely seems like something that would go on in the corporate world. So I'm not that surprised. And, they've definitely been trying to obscure their Disney Plus numbers. We know that they've lost over $1 billion on Disney Plus already. I don't see it becoming profitable anytime soon, especially with the way that they're handling their franchises. Nobody cares about Star Wars anymore. Nobody watched Andor. There was no buzz. Bad Batch is out right now. Nobody is talking about it. I didn't even know that it was back out until somebody mentioned wanting action figures, from the show, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the new season started." So that was a surprise. There's just no buzz on anything, and everything seems to have an anti-buzz. They released that Willow show, which is disastrous. It's just filled with identity politics, and people were immediately turned off. It's just bizarre the direction that they're going and doubling down on and tripling down on the things that are bringing them financial failure.
Another thing that Disney had going for them is basically they were governing themselves. They got this sweetheart deal from Florida. They decided to mess with Governor Ron DeSantis, and I guess, what is it? You fuck around and find out. And he's basically pulling that away. And I know a lot of people didn't believe it would happen. There's no way Florida could even do this to Disney. This is what that Park Place WDW Pro specifically had to say about that. DeSantis' government has announced that Reedy Creek Improvement District, the official name of Disney's special district, will be restructured and power of its governance handed over to an actual government with elected members. Reedy Creek Improvement District is approving plans for 2 more minor theme parks at Disney World and 1 major theme park for the future. The goal is to get everything approved before the state comes in and potentially prevents the ability to do so. For holdouts still believing that Disney can fend off a Florida takeover of their once legitimate pseudo cities and special districts, this really is the nail in the coffin. Disney is letting the world know where the future theme parks may go, and revealing information to competitors would never happen unless they really were trying to make it as difficult as possible for Florida to slow down those plans in the future. So the people that think even the Florida stuff isn't really going to happen, oh, it's happening, and they're trying to get out in front of it because they screwed themselves over that way as well. They never needed to get involved with politics. They are an entertainment company, an entertainment juggernaut. They decided they wanted to get involved in Florida politics. They played chicken with the governor, and now they're going to lose their sweetheart deal and have to play ball like everybody else.
And that is a mistake that is going to cost them billions of dollars. Playing chicken with the state of Florida turned out to be a really bad gamble. And it was all based on the fact that Chapek came out and he said, like, listen, we don't really want to get involved in politics. We want to pull back more to the center. We want to serve all of our customers, be they right, left, center. We want to produce entertainment for everybody. And unfortunately, the company was so filled with far left activists at that point that they held the company hostage. And Bob Iger had to issue a groveling apology. Bob Chapek had to issue a groveling apology. He had to do like this basically the what's it called? The Imagine Tomorrow meeting. Mm-hmm. And then all that got leaked where, you had executives saying that they're trying to, just insert LGBTQ
grooming.
Content.
It's called grooming, Aaron. They're grooming children.
I actually saw on Reddit, or was it Reddit? But someone was saying that since they're censoring the word grooming, that they should now just call groomers Disneys. It would be much harder to censor. And it's like, it's such bad PR. It's such a bad look. They're losing families. They're losing money hand over fist. You've got Universal eating their lunch on the theme parks. Universal's about to launch that Nintendo World. That is going to be huge. I know so many people that are excited to go see that. So many kids that, people with kids that are, just can't wait to go see that, just like a really immersive Nintendo World. And, they absolutely failed with their Star Wars park. It's not immersive. It's just very bland. It feels like a Moroccan flea market more than it does Star Wars, which Disney Star Wars, unfortunately, does not feel like Star Wars, so it's pretty much on brand. But they're making a lot of mistakes, and it's costing them. And it's going to take more than just bringing back the architect of all of these things. No matter how good you think he is at making deals and glad-handing Hollywood, it's going to take way more than that to pull that stock price back up.
Exactly, because Bob Iger, while he is in charge, and Bob Chapek was in charge before them, they're not the creative people. They're not the ones that really have destroyed Disney's brand. It's the people in the core of the company that have done all the real damage because families don't trust the brand anymore. Disney is no longer the bulletproof family brand that it once was, where you could sit your kid down in front of a Disney product and know they were going to be entertained and they weren't going to be indoctrinated into something that you really weren't comfortable with. I don't feel comfortable with any of my children spending 15 minutes unsupervised with any new Disney product created within the last 5 years. And I certainly don't want to watch them Star Wars and really even into the MCU Phase 4 stuff because they are destroying everything. It's systematic. It has to be by design this way. There's no way they could accidentally screw up this much stuff this fast. Look what happened to Pixar.
It's unbelievable. And it seems like cutting John Lasseter loose really cut the heart and soul out of Pixar. Nothing that they've done since then has been very successful. I did enjoy Soul. I thought that was pretty good. But they didn't release it in theaters. They just dumped it onto Disney Plus, and they've dumped a lot of Pixar stuff onto Disney Plus. And then, they tout this first all-female movie, coming out from Pixar. And it's about, it's an allegory for being on your period. It's just such a bizarre direction to go in. And, we've seen John Lasseter come out and kind of like criticize the things that they're doing. And, he's over at Skydance and turning out some pretty good stuff. He took a lot of really great Pixar people with him. So that was a huge blow. You've got the MCU starting to fail. Phase 4 has been a disaster, bringing in these replacement heroes that didn't work in the comic books and trying to force them into the movies. It's not getting the traction that they would need to keep the MCU at the level that it was. Star Wars, of course, is a disaster. And it's really awful to see this because Disney had such a good reputation for such a long time. It was so influential. Walt's vision for that company was so specific, and they've really just kind of lost their way. Iger coming in and being less about creating new things and more about just acquiring new things, just assimilating things into the collective. It has not worked out. Can you name a property that Disney has purchased? Not something that they created, but something that they purchased that they have made more successful than it was on its own? Or have they just ruined everything? Remember, they owned Power Rangers at one point, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster, and they sold it back to someone.
How do you ruin the Muppets? Are you kidding me?
It is bizarre to me. I was talking with Joe Corallo about this the other day. It's like, we just can't believe that we're in a world where, people don't know about the Muppets or aren't, don't have any like attachment to the Muppets because they just have squandered all of that goodwill. The Muppets are fantastic. You can do so many things with them.
I watched the Muppet Christmas Carol. Michael Caine playing it as straight as an arrow with the Muppets in a Christmas movie. It was brilliant. We will never see anything that cool again because it's Disney and it'll be infused with the message now. They've ruined everything because they all has to facilitate indoctrinating and pushing kids towards weird lifestyles rather than entertaining them nowadays.
I don't know why. Like, when I was writing Darkwing Duck, my feeling was, I had such a reverence for that show, such a reverence for the property and what had been done before and the creative people that had worked on it, that I didn't want to do anything that violated that. I wasn't interested in inserting my own messaging or my own sensibilities. It was just like, what kind of good Darkwing stories can I tell? What can I do to kind of like build on and expand what was already there? I think that when you have creatives who are interested on building on what exists, on honoring the legacy of these properties, and on leaving them intact for the next generation, I think that's where you have the timeless Disney, experience, the thing that we all grew up with, where, they kept all their actors the same. The voice actor for Donald remained the voice actor for Donald for as long as, as he could continue to do the voice. Minnie Mouse, all these characters, they had a continuity of quality, a continuity of entertainment, and just a continuity of familiarity. And now you're getting these things, we're seeing it everywhere. It's not just Disney. You're seeing it with Warner Brothers. That terrible Velma show just dropped where we get to be the therapist for all of Mindy Kaling's I was an ugly fat girl in high school and I resented everybody kind of trauma. We get to experience that through that show if we bother to watch it. I'm so tired of the narcissism. These things were created by giants. They were made by people who are just amazingly creative and wanted to entertain. And I think that we owe it to them, to these people that we're standing on the shoulders of, to maintain that quality. And unfortunately, you don't have that within these companies anymore. You have a bunch of narcissistic cultural vandals that just want to co-opt something that exists that is popular and then stuff it with their own messaging.
I know a lot of people are hoping, or they're like, Disney just can't crap the bed forever. It has to identify something's wrong and fix it. Well, it ain't happening anytime soon. This is what Marvel Studios casting director Sarah Finn told to The Wrap recently. I will say that after Avengers Endgame, it was one of the things that really fueled me. There's that moment of like, wait, where do we go from here after Endgame? It was so final. And then, of course, that impulse is we go with more representation, more diversity, and we go younger. And there's a whole fresh wave to explore here. And for me personally, that's really given me tremendous energy to kind of move forward. Well, it hasn't really worked out for the MCU or any of the other properties at Disney. She also goes on to talk about, we're looking for talent too. That just doesn't have to be about the big DEI stuff. We need talent, we need charisma. And it's like, well, explain, what did the critical drinker call her? The ginger plank of wood that's been in Star Wars, the MCU, and Willow. The most boring actress I've ever seen in my life, but she's in every single thing because she is diverse, young, she's everything that she wants, except for talented. Get out of here with that crap.
Where do we go after Endgame? Down. The answer is down. That's where you're going. You're going down. You're seeing diminishing returns on all of these things. And I don't think that it's because of, diversity necessarily, but it's when that's your focus over quality and over talent and over representing the characters as people know them. Like I was just having this conversation about X-Men. I was like, they're going to race swap the hell out of the X-Men. It's coming. Race and sexuality swap, just like it's going on in the comics right now. And, all of that is so that they can point to the comics and say, oh, well, we're just doing what's in the comics. No, you're doing what's in the last 5 years of the comics. These characters have long histories. People have long memories and celebrate these characters because of all the time that they spent with them. And then when you hand them something that's not representative of that character that they know, people aren't interested. We saw this at IDW when they did their Mask comic book. I told them from the outset that it was going to be a failure. And they was like, why? And I said, well, because you made Matt Tracker black. And they said, well, what is, what's the problem there? And I said, inherently, there's not a problem with that. I said, but what you're doing is you're appealing to the nostalgia of people that played with the original mask. So if you change Matt Tracker, those fans look at it and they say, oh, well, it's not my mask. They're doing something different. And they're not going to check it out. They're going to bypass it largely. They're going to move on. What would have made more sense is to take an existing character like Hondo McClane, who was a black character, and move him into the Matt Tracker role. You write a story. If you want to do that, if you want to have a black character front and center as the leader of the team, you move Matt Tracker off the board in some way. Maybe you create a mystery as to what happened to him. But Hondo had to step up and take the mantle, and now he's leading the mask team. And you can tell interesting stories spun out of that. And the fans that know the property will be like, oh, okay, it's Hondo. I know Hondo. I like Hondo. And they're on board with it. But when you give them something completely changed, and there's no new toy line or anything like that that's representative, that's driving new people who don't know the old mask to your property, you've already lost. You've already tripped up, and you've already not given the fans what it is that they expect, what they want, and what they're nostalgic for.
It feels like that's a Disney specialty right now. Give the fans what they don't want.
Absolutely, it's counterintuitive. But they keep going with it. And we see the stock price dropping, and eventually they're either going to have to course correct or they're going to be acquired. They're going to, the stock will drop so low that they'll be an attractive IP farm for a company like Apple or, some other big conglomerate that has the money to pony up for them.
This has been going on for quite some time at Disney. A little while ago, last year sometime, I actually had Kneon from Clownfish TV join me, and we talked about how at Disney, agenda trumped customers. This has been the downfall of Disney as a corporation. If you are unaware, if you haven't seen this, definitely check this video out. You have to see this right now. If you don't see it here, there's also a link in the video description.